This time with the second disc in place and both discs playing simultaneously. Oh, listen to that. It's unmistakable now. It's Morse code. Alright, I admit it. Whatever you want. But for the love of God, shut that bloomin' box up. Goodbye. Let me ask you again then, Inspector Gregson. Did you or did you not strike a deal with the witness next to you in the stand, Mr. Ashley Graydon? Specifically, did you furnish the witness with confidential case details in exchange for the music box disc? Did you reveal the existence of the peephole in the pawnbroker's storeroom, Inspector? I did. Stop! What are you doing, man? It's all exactly like the young Eastern lawyer had said. When our trial resumed after the recess, and we were stood here in the stand together, that's when he approached me with the deal. Shut up, you imbecile! Shut up! Psst, you there. You're the detective who turned up at the pawnbrokery the other day, aren't you? I may have something you're looking for, Inspector. With me at this very moment. So how about a trade? I suggest you accept. Or information that may make certain individuals uncomfortable will soon become very public indeed. I couldn't let that information become public knowledge under any circumstances. So I accepted the men's proposal and told them details about the case that should have put him in the clear. The peephole in the storeroom door, and the blood stains on the overcoat. By giving false testimony, this witness intended to have the defendant wrongly accused of murder. Inspector, you knew that! You still revealed those details to facilitate the witness's perjury. I did. But then it turned out the peephole had only been made that night after the incident took place. Scotland Yard wasn't aware of that, if I'm perfectly honest. Well, Mr. Graydon, what have you to say for yourself? There's nothing and no one left for you to hide behind. You struck a deal with the inspector in order to escape conviction of a very serious crime. Namely this: you are the third intruder who broke into the pawnbrokery of the night in question. And you perpetrated the murder of the proprietor, Mr. Pop Windibank. You! Ah! Traitor! Oh wow, he's gonna strangle a public official as well. Bailiff! Restrain that man! At once! That's it then. It's all over. I despised my life growing up. Those slums are vile places. I was cursed from birth, born into poverty, the son of a penniless artisan. My parents did nothing but quarrel all day long. What little money they had was never spent on me. So I set about studying, to better myself, to one day escape from that hellhole. And you eventually became a communications officer. I admired your determination. But then you decided to try sell government secrets? Why? Isn't it obvious? Because I wanted money. Even now, years later, the nightmares of my life in the slums wake me in the small hours. I wanted to drown them out, with more money than anyone who lived in that squalor could ever imagine. Then one day, I met him. Mr. Magnus McGilded. You're a fiend with a square talent, you are. I've money to throw your way if you're interested. All you need do is go along with me little plan now. I was to steal the ministry's telegraphic message logs, and McGilded would buy them for a handsome sum. As I was responsible for inspections of the ministry's communications office, it was a simple enough task. The lure of the devil's offerings. How easy it is to succumb. But you must surely have realized the seriousness of the crime you were committing. And for that reason, I took great lengths to ensure that my actions were untraceable. By using the music box. My father was a brickmaker, though my mother divorced him when I was still a child. Yes, Mr. Mason Milverton. That's right. He was very skilled with his hands. He'd once been a music box maker's apprentice. I imagined his skills would be sufficient to create a machine that would generate Morse code. So I sought out my father again, to employ his services. It was the first time I'd seen him since I left the slums 10 years earlier. Look at you, Ashley. What a fine gent you've become, eh? He was a different man to the one in my memory, a thin, frail old man. The poverty had never broken him, never corrupted him like it had me. I was sure he wouldn't help me if I told him the real reason. So I made up a story. I've got some work for you, Father. I need some music box discs made. Music box disc, eh? A musician's friend of mine has written some music he wants to sell to the public. I brought the score with me. There are 2, actually. I'd be delighted, son. It's been 20 years since I've did any work like this, though. Fetch my tools, would you? They're in the loft. That's how I had to make the 2 discs. Thereby splitting the information in 2. You were taking considerable precautions indeed. It was to protect myself as much as anything. It meant I could deal with McGilded in 2 separate transactions. The first involved the first of the 2 discs, and the music box for playing them. I exchanged them with McGilded for 10 guineas. Then on receipt of the second disc, he would pay 1,000 guineas. So what happened on the omnibus 2 months ago was the second part of the deal, the exchange of the second disc. Yes, I'd sold the man information that way a number of times already, but it seems he became reluctant to part with his money. That doesn't quite make sense, Mr. Graydon. For why was it on the omnibus 2 months ago? Your father, Mr. Milverton, was the one dealing with McGilded and not yourself. When I received 1,000 guineas after my first completed dealings with McGilded, I decided to give 200 to my father for his troubles. But my father realized something was amiss. In time, he worked out that I must be involved in something dubious. And then when he did, he said to me, "Next time there's an exchange, you'll let your old man do it, understand? Otherwise I won't take your money anymore." That was my father's way of dealing with it, I suppose. Climb into the omnibus, hand over the second disc, and take the money from McGilded. That's it. He had no idea what was actually on the discs I'd asked him to make. He never knew. Just like I'll never know why everything went so horribly wrong that night. All I know is that the disc was taken from him, and he never returned home. It was only then that I found out what sort of a monster McGilded really was. So after 10 years of not once uttering it, I swore on my father's name to exact revenge. Revenge! As anyone with even the remotest knowledge of the man will no doubt be able to imagine, McGilded brought all his wealth and influence to bear in the most despicable of ways to crush any semblance of justice in this trial. The crime scene was tampered with, evidence was fixed, and witnesses were bribed. The trial 2 months ago was a farce from start to finish. My feet had barely touched British soil back then. and I walked into that hornet's nest completely unaware of the sinister background to it all. I'd made plenty of money out of my dealings with McGilded by then, so I spared nothing in my arrangements 2 months ago. I knew exactly who to hire. If you're willing to pay the price, there are people in this city willing to do anything you ask. McGilded himself had showed me that. Are you saying that I think you have the picture now? After he twisted everything to his favor in the courtroom to ensure he walked out free. I took matters into my own hands and delivered the justice that monster deserved. That tragic incident following the trial in here 2 months ago was planned and executed by yours truly. McGilded's death that day was caused by this man. Everything is ready, sir. If you'd like to follow me into the courtroom.
Oh, what's this, officer? That's sooner than I was led to believe.
I hope it's not inconvenient, sir. There were some changes to the schedule.
Well, I must be making tracks now. It's time for the inspection. They're going to examine the omnibus again, so I'm told. First, if I could be present for it myself.
So that policeman who came to tell McGilded he could examine the omnibus again. That's right, an imposter, hired by me. McGilded uses his wealth to manipulate the trial. He paid people to adulterate the omnibus with all manner of false evidence. He threatened witnesses to lie in their testimony. So I gave the man a taste of his own medicine. Once the omnibus was doused in paraffin, one of my sham policemen ushered McGilded inside and set him on a one-way journey to hell. An eye for an eye. That's how I avenged my father's death. A spine-chilling account, indeed. But that wasn't the end of it for me. There was a loose end, you see. A loose end? Yes, I should think it's obvious. The second disc, which my father had taken to exchange with McGilded. Ah, yes. This was indeed no mention of it in the man's trial 2 months ago. Clearly because it had been removed from the scene of the crime. When I realized it was missing, I remembered something. Something from the first time I dealt with McGilded. This is the first of 2 discs, and a music box you need to play them. Well, look at that now. What an ingenious little invention. So then, as promised, 10 guineas for you, young man. What's this? Windibank's pawnbrokery? Aye, 'tis a pawnbroker's ticket, so it is. You can use it to redeem an article I've deposited there for you. There's no need to give a name. Just hand over the ticket and tell the fiend the watchword. I put a jewel in pawn for you. It'll fetch a good 10 guineas if you sell it, so it will. I've never heard of a pawnbrokery being used quite that way before. Have you not, Mr. Graydon? London's pawnbrokeries are very useful places, you know. Each one is like an extremely secure vault. So I knew that if he'd taken steps to hide the disc, he would be in that pawnbrokery somewhere. And that on that night he killed my father, he must have entrusted the ticket to someone. To Gina. I remember now. That's when we first met you at Windibanks that afternoon 2 days ago. You had a description of Mr. Lestrade written down. How did you know who you were looking for? From the trial. That pickpocket's testimony was clearly peculiar. Anyone could see it. I realized immediately she was another of McGilded's pawns. That he must have threatened her somehow. I was fairly convinced it would be her who had the ticket. So I started to make some inquiries. I had a strong suspicion that girl would come out of the woodwork on the redemption deadline. And he was absolutely right. And yes, sure enough, she did. All I needed to do was to wait until the girl went to Windibanks to redeem the articles. Unfortunately, she redeemed only McGilded's overcoat and the one disc that was in its pocket. The all-important music box with the second disc inside was missing, because it had already been forfeited 2 days earlier. But I was unaware of that fact. Had I not been, I could have avoided my nighttime excursion. Meanwhile, as our investigation into the stolen government secrets was progressing, we picked up on the fact that McGilded was involved. Inspector, you've recovered fast. My orders were to recover the stolen information as quickly as possible. So we started gathering the fella's possession and examining whatever we could lay our hands on. We had a full-scale investigation going on at the yard, but we had to keep it as quiet as we could. Then, when the inspector here took the disc from me in the pawnbrokery that day, I became nervous. I was sure the music box and the second disc were still in the shop somewhere. So I knew it was a race against time. I had to find those articles before the police did. So that's what prompted you to break into the place that night. With the help of your old friends, the Skulkin brothers. What happened that night in the pawnbrokery, I can only describe as a nightmare. While Nash and Ringo were searching the counter, I located the music box I'd sold to McGilded on the shelves of forfeited articles. And the second disc was inside. Yes, I slipped it into my pocket with a very deep sigh of relief. But then, something entirely unexpected happened. What are you doing in my shop? A gunshot rang out in the shop, and I felt a sharp pain in my left arm. The broker fired his gun, and the bullet pierced your limb. Yes, exactly. But unfortunately, I decided to bring my own gun at that night, just in case. Before I knew what was happening, I'd fight back. The man had already turned to flee. I'd intended to fire in his direction, much less kill him. But unfortunately for both of us, the bullet hit home. It struck him in the middle of his back as he fled through the storeroom door for refuge. A sorry, sorry tale. It all took place in the blink of an eye. I don't imagine Nash and Ringo ever realizing what happened at first. I was terrified, so I fled. And that's the whole story. That's everything that happened at Windibanks on that wretched night. Earlier, you called McGilded a monster. A man who used his wealth and influence to distort the facts and escape justice for the crime of murder. What tragic irony, for what you have done is exactly the same. You've become the very monster you saw and despised so deeply in McGilded. Oh, we're going niche on this one. Yes, I think I have. He who hunts monsters should be aware that he doesn't become one himself. Well, this has been a long and exhausting trial. However, it would seem that at last we've arrived at the truth. Inspector Gregson, one of Mr. Ashley Graydon. He's been restrained, my lord, and is being escorted to the yard. He'll be charged with the murder of Mr. Windibank and the stealing of government secrets. Very good. And you, Inspector, regrettably, you will have to face charges yourself. Yes, my lord, of course. It transpires you were complicit in helping a criminal escape justice. That fact remains whether or not you were doing so in the line of duty. The crime is a serious one, Inspector, and inexcusable. Now to the defendant, Miss Gina Lestrade. Yeah. It is time for the final education. Is the jury ready, Mr. Foreman? Yes, sir. Gunnery Squadron standing by, sir. This is really it now. The last push, the final call, the finishing whistle. My men are ready to deliver their verdicts. Thank you, Mr. Foreman. Very well, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. You will now declare your final decisions to the court.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
And that's all. Haha, that's the stuff. I'm off the hook. Finally, Bruno, you finally managed to do it. Finally is the word. I really wasn't sure if we'd come out on top for a while there. Susie was right. You're the best lawyer in the world. Miss Lestrade, I'm not finished with you yet. Hey, what are you looking at me like that for? Before you start enjoying your freedom, there are certain other crimes to consider, Hey, 2 months ago in my courtroom, no less, you gave false testimony, did you not? In relation to the trial today, not only did you unlawfully enter Mr. Windibank's pawnbrokery, you also attempted to abscond with Mr. McGilder's property, it seemed. Aye! I've never done nothing of the sort. Of course not. It's not like you were gleefully wearing Mr. McGilder's coat in your cell or anything. And just when I was getting excited about throwing a party for Ginny this evening. And turning our attention to the defense. Determining that, when played together, the music box discs containing a message in Morse code was... Oh, well, it was certainly a most unexpected revelation, counsel. I need a frickin' drink after that. Quite so, my lord. The prosecution was caught entirely off guard. In fact, I think we should applaud my learned friend's courage here today. I propose a toast. To demanding that government secrets be disseminated before the entire courtroom. Very sorry about that. It was the only way I could get Inspector Gregson to admit what he'd done, so... If I may say something on that point. Isn't that... It's, about the sounds produced by the music box before. I do wonder if that was really Morse code at all. What? What are you saying, ma'am? Oh, well, it's just that I'm really rather fanatical when it comes to Morse code, you see. So much so that the whole world seems to be covered in dots and dashes to me, in fact. Goodness, madam. An unhealthy level of obsession one feels. But I must say that, in my opinion, the sounds produced by those two discs were nothing more than that. A meaningless series of two different tones. What? Unless it was in a different language. It wasn't Morse code at all? My lord, the defense would like to listen to the music box again. Are you off your nut? How many times do I have to tell you those discs contain ministerial and secret, sunshine? This courtroom is not an appropriate forum to discuss the nature of the government communications. We know McGilder conspired to trade national secrets with our enemies. Such secrets acquired from Mr. Graydon. Now that the man has admitted to his crimes, we have no need to pursue the matter further. Aye, but it's really gonna bother me. Miss Lestrade. Yeah, my lord. That which you have seen today here in this courtroom has been extremely disturbing. Falsified evidence, intimidation, perjury, a grim catalogue of depravity. An appalling experience to befall any child. Come on, it ain't nothing I don't see most days in the back slums. I beg your pardon. If you're weak, you pay for it. That's how life goes. Gina. But look, I reckon I've worked something out today. The world ain't fair, but if you want it to change, you gotta start at some. You gotta start at home. You gotta change how you are yourself. Well, that's a very laudable lesson, I would say. I eagerly look forward to the born-again Miss Lestrade never gracing my courtroom with her presence again. Now, with regard to the murder of Mr. Pop Winterbank, proprietor of a pawnbrokery business on Baker Street, I hereby declare the defendant, Miss Lestrade, not guilty. And that's the game. Oh, that's a good one. That is all. Court is adjourned. On a personal note, I must say you've surprised me, my Far Eastern friend. Oh. Despite being a Nipponese, you saw through the pretense to the malice that festered within that Englishman, and at the same time saw through the grime to the surprising heart of your English client. You have a curious talent for judging character, especially considering our very different cultures. I don't think there's anything curious about it. Whether we're from the Empire of Great Britain or the Empire of Japan, we're all human beings. We're not so very different on the inside. You know, I took this case for one simple reason. To lock swords with you once again here in the courtroom. You did. When I encountered you for the first time 2 months ago, it reminded me of toasting friendship and trust with another Nipponese, only to find my trust betrayed. Through you, I hope to look into the eyes of the man I once knew and try to understand. You mentioned something similar earlier today, about total betrayal at the hands of the Japanese. What happened exactly? Well, you may ask, and one day, when the time comes, you will learn the answer, whether you like it or not. Alright then, I'll wait for that day if I must. Coming to be known as the Reaper of the Bailey, and my retirement from service 5 years ago, it gives me cause to wonder if our meeting has some deeper purpose. So, farewell, my learned Nipponese fellow, until we meet again. Wow, that took most of the day. It's done. It's over at last. But where has Iris disappeared to? Congratulations, Gina. I knew it all along. I knew you were innocent. Well, you did what you said, Mr. Naruhodo. You believed in me right up to the end. You're as odd as your name. What's odd about it? I told you I had faith in you, didn't I? No one ever has before, you see. I kept a promise, I mean. Properly. That's awful. I figured something out today. All my life growing up in the slums, I've never trusted no one. But that's just because I've been scared of being stabbed in the back. I mean, the more you trust someone, the more it hurts when they let you down. Yes, I think I can understand that. After all, I had a taste of it in that trial 2 months ago. I chose to trust someone and paid for it. That betrayal left a big scar. Yeah, I know that quite well, too. You know, though, Gina, I worked something out quite recently, too. Trusting in someone is really an exercise in learning to trust yourself. And when your gut tells you it's the right thing to do, and your trust is rewarded, there's no better feeling in the world. I think I have you to thank for reminding me of that valuable lesson. Oh well, if you say so. Don't make a fat lot of sense to me, though. I'm trying to say that putting my faith in Eugenia has been a real pleasure. I'm crying out loud, Peckety! But I suppose I sort of feel the same way. I mean, sometimes trusting somebody else is, you know, alright. Thanks. This is the way I see it, Ryunosuke. A defense lawyer is only as good as his faith in his client. And that comes down to how much faith he has in himself. After this experience, I'm starting to feel like I understand what you mean. Kazuma, am I living up to your expectations? Am I turning out to be the lawyer you believed I could be? Upon the interruption, what the deuce does a man have to do to be noticed around here, my dear fellow? It's too late for that voice now, Mr. Naruhodo. I've been standing here patiently in the corner of the room for an eternity. Ahaha, yes, it was me all along. I would have said when you finally noticed me. But you people, with your incessant babbling. Mr. Sholmes! Ahaha, yes, it was me all along. You see? I'd assumed you'd been taken back to the hospital, to be honest. Indeed I was, but I managed to escape again. What are we gonna do with you? Made my knowledge of them known to the man, and he happily issued me with a leave of absence. How very above board. Enough of my adventures. It was a fine victory, Mr. Naruhodo. Your tireless efforts justly rewarded, I feel. Congratulations, Arnold. As a close friend, I tip my hat to you. Thank you. Heh. Some great detective you are. Great at being cold as ice, maybe. Have I irked you in some way, Miss Lestrade? Well, you've been having a snooze in your nice soft bed. Some of us have been fighting for our lives. Ah, well, that bullet did cause me to lose a substantial amount of blood, it's true. So I've indeed been feeling somewhat cold. Not perhaps cold as ice, but, well, have a feel. Could you take your hands off my neck, please, Mr. Sholmes? And in some way, I suppose, congratulations are in order for you too, Miss Lestrade. What's that supposed to mean? Why so half-hearted? Well, naturally, isn't my intention to harm you, but an acquittal in a trial with that particular prosecutor is perhaps a little precarious. Well done, Mr. Sholmes. Not alarming in the slightest. Oh, the Reaper, you mean? Because anyone who's found not guilty in that trial, he was working on wines end up dead anyway. Is that it? The very point I was trying to make. As exemplified by the fate of Mr. McGilded, in fact. Ah, but of course, I pay no attention to such irrational drivel myself. Yeah, well, it don't bother me. Oh, really? Of course not. The way I see it, Reaper's a bit like him upstairs. Him upstairs? You mean, like God? Yeah, him upstairs knows what's what, right? He knows what people are like on the inside. He wouldn't have got the wrong end of the stick. There's some copes like that Bob Trotter who are rotten to the core. At the end of the day, him upstairs makes sure they get what they deserve. Suppose that's one way of looking at it. Divine justice is one thing, though. The Reaper taking matters into his own hands and claiming the lives is another. Well, I think Mr. McGilded's in this world, so I ain't scared. I got principles, see. A trait in you which is to be admired, Miss Lestrade. Boy, just give it a rest, alright. As I was saying, congratulations, Arnold. The news of your acquittal was very welcome news to me indeed. Let me express my heartfelt congratulations, Gina. Well, there you are, Hurley. How long have you been there? Honestly, I went to the main entrance especially to meet you there. Ah, my dear, I do apologize. Oh, these two. Blah, blah, blah. Can you imagine, Iris? Would you do credit it? I'm not sure, really. I beg your pardon. I'm sorry, Hurley, but you just don't have the weighty presence you seem to think you have. In fact, you really ought to be careful about that. It's gonna land you in trouble one day. I'll be careful. Ouch. Anyway, it's such a shame. I was so hoping to throw a party for Ginny tonight. But you won't be able to come, will you? Don't look like I'm gonna be going nowhere for a while. Yeah, the judge's patter. I got stuff to make amends for, apparently. All them offenses. What was it again? Breaking and entering, taking the bog trotter's stuff, what was in lug, blah blah blah. I think you'll find that basically being a pickpocket is the main offense. But diving ain't an offense. It's a job, innit? I don't think so. Still, it's got me thinking, all this. Maybe I should start looking for another line of work. I mean, you didn't start off as a lawyer, did you, Otto? Well, no. But I was never a pickpocket. Well, anyway, I reckon I can make a change. I'm gonna do something for all them lot like me from the slums. Something that makes a difference for them. It's a wonderful idea, Ginny. I'm sure you can do it. What is it? Nothing. It's Gina Lestrade. The prison carriage has arrived, madam. Come with me to the rear gate at once. Right. Well, looks like I'm off then. Goodbye, Gina, and good luck. Otto. Yes? That's thanks for you. Aye! What was that for? I dunno. I mean, I don't know what to say, so... Indeed. Perhaps the situation calls for a phrase hitherto missing from your vocabulary, Miss Lestrade. On occasions such as this, I would recommend a simple thank you. Oh. Oh yes. It's good advice, Ginny. Right, I see. Well... Thanks, Otto. Aw, that's a nice smile. Thank you for everything what you've done. For believing in me. Not at all. In fact, that should be my line. Thank you, Gina. Well, there she goes. I wonder if I'll ever see her again. Well, well. Quite the indomitable pickpurse. I nearly forgot. I bought a paper outside. It's a special edition, and this trial is all over the front page. Pickpocket's innocence proven. Isn't it wonderful? You should have shown it to Gina, Iris. She would have been thrilled. How silly of me. Ah, but anyway, would you like the good news or the bad news? Well, what do you say, Bruno? I'd rather get the bad news out of the way first. Absolutely not. I have no intention of listening to anything but good news. And there you have it. How people answer that question says a lot about them, doesn't it? Let's not go there. Right then. The rain has finally stopped. It's a record level of rainfall, apparently. Well, that is good news indeed. We can journey back in greater comfort. Our Alright then, what's the bad news? Huge storm has left the seas very choppy. The channel in particular is awful, so sailings out of Denver have been delayed by a day or more. That means we can go see off Susato. But there won't be a train, surely. We couldn't be that lucky. Who do you think I am, Mr. Naruhodo? Mr. Sholmes? I rushed to Victoria Station earlier and made arrangements for a special express. If we hurry now, we shall be there in time for dinner. And I know of a fine restaurant that serves the most delicious baked soap. There he goes again. I happen to be aware of a number of the rail transport director's foibles. I merely made my knowledge of them known to the man, and he happily laid on the locomotive. Elementary. Just an idea, but maybe it'd be wise to stop manipulating people that way. What are we waiting for then? To London, Victoria! That took somewhat longer than I anticipated. Susie's boat must be about to leave now. Miss Susato, where are you? Over there, look! Looks like she's reading something. Don't throw it out!
Hold it!
Miss Susato, wait! What are you doing? Mr. Naruhodo, what are you doing here? We came as soon as we could after the trial. I mean, we heard that the sailings were being delayed due to the bad weather, you see. Oh, I see. Tell me, how did Gina's trial go? It went well. She was acquitted. That's wonderful. Really wonderful news. The book you were about to throw into the sea. It was your Encyclopedia of British Law, wasn't it? Oh dear. I was hoping you hadn't seen that. I'm not worthy of practicing law in any way now. So I was saying my final farewell. Goodbye to law? You? No. Would I be correct in assuming? It's because of the peephole, Miss Susato. I deliberately altered the scene of a crime, and then I tried to hide the fact. What I did is utterly unforgivable. That reminds me. How did you even come to have this, Susie? On the evening of the incident, Mr. Sholmes had invited Gina to dinner and... oh yeah, she picked it out of her pocket. That band's very important to me. Well, if it's important, you should pay more attention to it. You didn't notice for ages. On a whim, I thought it would be fun to see if I could take the Cat Flapperman, so I put it up my sleeve. Really? And then I rather forgot about it, until I found myself in Mr. Windibank's shop with it later that night. And then... all of that. After Mr. Naruhodo had left the shop, I started to think. That door started to play on my mind. The storeroom door, you mean? Yes, if Gina was anywhere in the shop, I realized it could only be behind that door. And at that moment, the little device out of my sleeve sprang to mind. I was so worried about Gina, I simply had to know. So I used the Cat Flappermat to make the peephole in the door. Indeed, it was of the first importance, that point. Precisely when the peephole was made, that information would prove to be Mr. Naruhodo's greatest weapon. Naturally, without proof, it would have amounted to nothing. But when I looked through the hole in the door, the sight of that met my eyes made my blood run cold. Thoughts started to run through my mind. I remembered that trial 2 months earlier. Yeah. About how he'd manipulated the evidence and arranged false testimonies to secure his freedom. It made the British justice system feel very dark and sinister to me. And then, a terrible thought occurred to me. What if some wicked criminal was planning to do the same thing now? Because from the appearance of the crime scene, it looked exactly as though Gina had shot Mr. Windibank. Even though I was sure she would never have done such a thing. Yep. It would be very difficult for anyone to give false testimony in this case. What do you mean? Well, the crime appeared to have happened behind the door of a locked room. For someone to claim falsely to have witnessed it, there'd have to be a way to see beyond the door. For which, a peephole would be the very thing. Yeah, trap. So, is that why you kept it secret, Susie? You never mentioned that you made the peephole to anyone, not even the police. I know. And I knew at the time what I was doing was wrong. A criminal offense, even. That's why I decided to confide in Mr. Sholmes. Mr. Naruhodo was completely backed into a corner with no other possible means of escape. The truth about the people could save him. That was my plan. Why didn't you just tell me everything before the trial began? My dear fellow, you're not thinking straight. If she had done that, it would have rendered you complicit in the whole escapade. You could have been disbarred if you'd seemed to have knowingly tampered with a crime scene. So Miss Susato decided to shoulder the burden of responsibility alone. For your sake and Miss Lestrade's. Oh, Susato. The truth is, when it happened, I did it because I'd lost a little of my faith in the law. I was worried the right person wouldn't be convicted of the crime. But the moment I allowed myself to think that is the moment I lost my right to call myself a judicial assistant. Oh, what you did isn't comparable to what he did. Graydon's the one who lied in the witness stand using that people as a way to implicate Gina. And besides that, if the people whole inconsistency hadn't existed, I'm not at all sure she would have been acquitted in the end. Miss Susato, what you did saved Gina's life. Well, with your kind words, Mr. Naruhodo, you've saved me too, from my regrets. Aww. Well, we must all be thankful that Miss Lestrade's freedom has been assured. Although some of the loose ends in that trial will continue to play on my mind, I'm sure. The revelation that the music box contained secret messages, Mr. Naruhodo. What a triumph to work that out! I'm full of admiration! Well, actually, that argument wasn't quite as compelling as I thought it was. Oh, it wasn't. There was a communications officer among the jury member, you see. A telegraph operator. She said that the majority of the sounds on the disc were just meaningless tones. As one would expect, after all, we are talking about secret government communications. No doubt they were written in cipher to avoid being readily understood should they have been intercepted. There we go, cipher. So then we could never have hoped to understand the message anyway. Nonsense, my dear fellow. It's quite a zero-pipe problem, I assure you. Excuse me. Asogi? Asogi? Well, that can't be a real word, can it? How funny. Wait! Iris, what did you just say? Oh, I just said asogi. What is he doing in this? Does that word mean something to you? Mean something? Asogi was the name of my best friend. What? How? How do you know that name, Iris? I wrote it down during the trial before, and the message was playing on the music box. Oh, you're dangerous. I thought the message probably wouldn't be written out in plain Morse code, so I tried various ways to interpret it. But whenever I tried, the words just didn't seem to make any sense. That is, in English at least. I knew it! It's in a different language. It suddenly occurred to me, you see. There's more than one Morse code, not just the English variety. Various countries around the world could have altered and added more to Morse code to use it in their own language. I don't believe it. Are you saying... That's right. I've only actually seen a chart of Japanese Morse code once before. But I think it's based on the Iroha pangram, isn't it? In Japanese Morse code, the message says Asogi. Sorry, but I don't remember all of the Japanese Morse code. Iris, would you let me see that? Yes, I spent some time studying it. Because I'm quite sure Morse code will become ever more important for international communications. Did you focus your efforts on the English version? Oh, come on. What is the message? But what can this possibly mean? Is it a list or something? There's no doubt that this message is written in Japanese Morse code. But the British Empire has been using Japanese for its secret communications. I don't understand the reason why, but the message appears to be a list of 4 people's names. The first is Kei Asogi, our friend. The second is A Shin. I don't recognize that name. The third is T. Greguson. Tobias Gregson. I would assume Tobias Gregson's the third man on the list. What's his name doing in a secret government communication as well? And the last name... It's just so strange, so unexpected. What is it, Susie? Don't keep us in suspense! The last name is J. Wilson. What? Wilson? John H. Wilson? You mean Daddy? It says only J. Wilson, so I'm afraid I can't be sure. What the heck is going on here? That is all 4. And that's the end of the message, or rather the end of what you noted down, Iris. I just can't believe it. Who would ever have thought that those discs contain Japanese Morse code? Not to mention a strange list of some disturbingly familiar names. It would appear this particular message is a communication of some kind between Great Britain and the Empire of Japan. So Daddy could be in Japan then, where Susie and Runo come from. Well, no, it's not very likely really, is it? I mean, there are thousands of people with the surname Wilson, and there must be lots of J's among them. Professor John H. Wilson, visiting professor of medicine at the Imperial Yume University. We'll have to figure that out in the next game. We'll roll the back of Boulder at the mouth of a very dark cave. Well, an Amaterasu's not going to be coming out in this game. It's a dark cave we shouldn't go wandering inside. Alright. Time to head out. The ship is going to set sail soon. It's time to say goodbye, Susato. Dunkirk, and then Japan. You're really going then, Susie? We wish you a safe passage, Miss Susato. Thank you so much. I wish all of you the very best. Miss Susato! I'd hoped to have you always at my side to guide me and support me. Mr. Naruhodo, please come back soon. As far as I'm concerned, you really are the very best judicial assistant in the world. Aww. I'm quite sure I'll be back before you know it. Really, Susie? Oh, now don't forget Iris. I made you a promise I've yet to fulfill. About your manuscript. The Hound of the Baskervilles. Well, I'll be waiting for you then, Susie. Promise is a promise. Definitely, Iris. Mr. Naruhodo. You remember the first time we met? Of course. On the SS Buria when I was dragged out from the wardrobe still half asleep. If I remember rightly, you threw me halfway across the cabin with a Susato takedown. You know very well I'm talking about after that. It's strange, but being thrown together as we were in that case, I somehow felt straight away you are the perfect person to continue Kazuma-sama's great legacy. And my instincts were right. I really want to believe. I'm sure that I'll be back soon. Farewell until then. Alrighty.
Somehow we seem to have come to the end of the adventures of Ryunosuke Naruhodo. Or the first volume, at least. Looking back now, it feels as though fate has led me on this journey. Fate led me to becoming a lawyer, to traveling halfway around the world, to meeting the great detective. I'm sure there'll be trials and tribulations ahead.
There they said it.
Yes, there will. But whatever happens, I know I'll be able to turn my fortunes around. After all, I have the greatest friends in the world on my side.
And with that, Great Ace Attorney is done. Or is it? Ah yes, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes, Mr. Sholmes? I have some rather awkward news. The railway company has decided to sue over the Special Express train, apparently. It caused such a commotion on the line, all the other trains had to wait at stations. But really, we would never have made it to Dover in time otherwise. Anyway, I explained everything, and how it was all your fault. Excuse me. I believe a formal complaint should be delivered to your office tomorrow. But not to worry, my dear fellow. According to Miss Susato, you love defending yourself in court. Oh boy. He really didn't look like the sort of man who'd do something so outrageous. See? You guys are gonna be the death of me. A word, if you don't mind. Why, certainly. Any word you like. Bellow it out, my dear fellow. Then, I really must say...
Objection!
And that's the game! It's been fun. A few stupid spots. But other than that, It's been really fun, and I will look forward to playing the others later. In the following weeks, hundreds of music boxes arrived at Baker Street from all over Europe. Something was afoot, though it transpired I did order all of them myself. So I advertised them for sale with used by Mr. Sholmes to solve an important case. And the money I've earned, consulting detective work, pays a pittance by comparison. Oh, Sholmes. Anywho, I'm looking forward to doing the next one. That'll be next year. I haven't slept a wink. This manuscript is due tomorrow now. When I'm this busy, Hurley usually cooks me breakfast. Well, cooks is an overstatement, for some dry toast and some insipid coffee. I do miss Susie and her lovely Japanese breakfasts. In any case, my next project will be a Halloween one after this. Witness, your testimony is riddled with contradictions. Exactly. Rarely do rare Coben coins hide under rare stakes themselves. Well, I don't know, sir. Knows his father is an innocent man. Or are you calling my son a lawyer? Witnesses, my courtroom is no place for your petty arguments. Yeah, I'll be doing a special Halloween project next month, after all of this is done. Having delivered the Russian dancer to shore in Shanghai, I laid low on the steamship for a while. But last night, I apprehended an extremely suspicious Japanese national on board. I've done nothing wrong! All I did was give Wagahai's offspring refuge in my pocket. A man brings some kittens on board and suddenly he's hardened criminal. It's not fair! Oh, dear lord, Sosuke Natsume. Even now. You definitely have to be the ancestor of Larry Butts. With how much shit has happened to you. Scientific investigation will be the gold standard for policing in the new age. I dream of a world governed by the tenets of order and discipline. Like a great clock, in fact, whose hundreds of parts mesh together in perfect unison. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have but 2 minutes and 37 seconds until my next appointment. There's something fishy with you. Laius Rents magazine is that, and I'm in it again. Whenever I say that one line she wrote now, I get a standing ovation. Want to hear it? Not bad, I suppose, for an amateur. Her ladyship puts me to shame. You did that yourself, too. In any case, the next game I will be playing for Halloween. Been visiting the old girl on a daily basis, of course. Jody, my old jailbird. Must say, battling with those bally stairs every day has done wonders for the Dicky Peg. What? Managing rather well with the housework, too. Not this major bid from this tape-up I've seen. Hope the gossiping neighbors don't realize the man of the house is his own maid. Anywho, next game, really different project. Hope you guys are looking forward to it. That'll be the second to last one before the year is over. My Growly's back on the beat again, all thanks to the Reapers. There's nothing I enjoy more than these days than hunting out a small change in the gutter. I'm a better Bobby now, looking out for Londoners, their drop pipe pennies, and my lovely wife. And you really shouldn't deserve to be this. Oh, Rowley. Hey. In any case, looks like I'm gonna be doing time for a bit now. But Iris comes every day for a natter, so it ain't too boring. She's always going on about all them cases what Shams is looking into. Criminal investigations are kind of interesting when you get into them. In any case, That's me signing off. But I got a few more voices to do in this before we're really done. There he is. Yes, I renounced my upbringing and chose a life of sophisticated crime. But regrets? Please. Gripe over, mate. This ain't the Ash we used to know. We got time in here to plan the comeback of Milverton and Skulkin's Milk Run, right? The three Musk Watsits. Milking the neighborhood for all it's worth. This past 6 months has been a time I shall remember forevermore. Painful goodbyes and wonderful encounters. I've come to realize that's what life is all about. Naruhodo-san, I promise, your assistant will return to you one day. But for now, I leave you with many memories, and a heartfelt wish that life will treat you well. Yep. And with that, we're done. I'll see you guys next time.